The crowd outside the stadium was loud. People cheered, lights flashed, and everyone waited for the big moment. Rihanna was the headliner. Posters with her face were everywhere. Fans had flown in from different countries just to see her perform. But inside her dressing room, something unexpected was happening. Rihanna sat in a chair, looking at her phone. Her team moved around her, checking outfits, adjusting sound equipment, and confirming set lists. The energy backstage was high, but Rihanna wasn't moving. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't tired. She just felt something inside her saying, "Not yet." Her manager walked in and smiling. "Ready to go?" he asked. She looked up and shook her head slowly. Everyone stopped. The room got quiet. Someone even turned down the music playing from a speaker in the corner. "What's wrong?" her assistant asked. Rihanna took a deep breath. "I need to talk to Oprah," she said calmly. Everyone looked at each other. Was she serious? It was just minutes before showtime. The crowd was chanting her name. The stage crew was in position. But Rihanna stayed still. Her makeup artist gently asked, "Do you mean after the show?" Rihanna shook her head. "Before," she replied. "I'm not going out there until I talk to her." Her tone wasn't angry or upset. It was firm, honest, and clear. She wasn't trying to cause drama. She wasn't trying to delay the show. She just knew she needed to talk to someone who truly understood her, and that person was Oprah. Her manager stepped outside to make a few calls. Her assistant tried reaching someone from Oprah's team. Phones rang. Messages were sent. No one really knew what was going on in Rihanna's mind, but they knew it was serious. Outside, the crowd continued to wait. The host of the event was stretching his part on stage to buy time. The production team whispered into their headsets, wondering what was causing the delay. Meanwhile, inside the room, Rihanna leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. She stared at the floor. She wasn't crying. She wasn't panicking. She just seemed deep in thought. Her silence said more than words. A stylist tried to offer her a bottle of water. She thanked her softly but didn't take it. Everyone in the room now realized that this moment wasn't about costumes, lights, or music. It was something personal. And while the world waited for Rihanna to appear on stage, she waited for a different kind of spotlight. One that didn't come from the ceiling or the cameras, but from a voice she trusted, a voice that had helped her through difficult times before. And until she heard that voice again, she wasn't moving. The backstage area was full of excitement, but Rihanna wasn't part of the buzz. The team rushed around, double-checking the sound systems and preparing her wardrobe. It seemed like the usual hustle before a major performance. But Rihanna was different. She stood apart from the chaos, her eyes focused on her phone. She didn't look at the countdown clock ticking down the time until she had to go on stage. She looked calm, almost distant. Her manager, Greg, was the first to notice the change in her. He approached her, a smile on his face, but it quickly faded when he saw that Rihanna wasn't responding like she usually did. She didn't seem ready to perform, not in the usual way. Instead of her usual energy, she seemed quiet. Something was on her mind. "Rihanna, are you okay?" Greg asked gently, hoping she was just nervous or tired. She looked up from her phone, her eyes meeting his. There was no panic, no signs of stress, just a steady calm. "Greg, I need to talk to Oprah," she said, her voice calm but firm. Greg blinked, unsure he had heard her correctly. He glanced around, seeing the stage preparations happening in full force. "Oprah? Right now?" he asked, a little confused. "We've got maybe 30 minutes before the show starts. Is everything okay?" Rihanna nodded slowly. "I won't perform until I speak with her," she said simply, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Greg stood still for a moment, trying to process what she was saying. He had worked with Rihanna for years, but this was unusual. She had always been professional, always on time, and always ready to face the audience. But tonight, something had shifted. It wasn't like her to delay a performance, especially when the crowd was already so excited. "But we can't delay the show," Greg said. "The fans are waiting. The crew is ready." Rihanna looked at him, her expression soft but serious. "I know," she said, "but I need to speak with her. It's important." Greg felt torn. He understood that Rihanna's well-being was the most important thing, but the show was massive and everything was in motion. The pressure to make it happen was building. Still, he knew that when Rihanna was firm about something, there was usually a reason. He made the decision to try his best to make it happen. Okay, Greg said, pulling out his phone. He quickly sent messages to Oprah's team, hoping for a quick response. The minutes felt like hours as the team waited for the answer. Time was slipping away. The excitement of the crowd outside was growing louder, and it became clear that the decision to delay wasn't going to be easy. But Rihanna sat there, calm as ever, waiting for the conversation that she felt was necessary before stepping into the spotlight. Her assistant approached her next, offering support, but also looking worried. "Should we start getting you ready?" she asked, unsure whether to prepare her for the stage or wait for the call. Rihanna looked up, her eyes steady and confident. "Not yet," she said. "I'll be ready when I hear from her." Rihanna wasn't the type to stop a show without a strong reason. She had performed in storms, with injuries, and even on days when she felt completely drained. But this time was different. Her team could feel it. This wasn't about stage fright or a last-minute issue with the sound. This was something she carried inside her, something she hadn't talked about yet. The room around her stayed quiet as the crew moved softly, giving her space. They didn't want to ask too many questions. They just knew something was off. Rihanna sat on a small couch, her phone in her hand, but she wasn't texting or scrolling. She just stared at the screen, waiting. No one knew exactly what had happened in the past few days, but those close to her had noticed she'd been more thoughtful than usual, quieter. She had arrived at rehearsals on time, but didn't joke around like she normally did. She spoke less. Her usual energy wasn't there. It was like she was carrying the weight that no one could see. Greg, her manager, had been with her for years. He'd seen her through high moments and hard ones. He stepped beside her and said, "Do you want to talk about it?" Rihanna looked up. She gave a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Not yet," she said. "I just need to talk to her first." He nodded and didn't push further. He trusted her. He knew if she said she needed to speak with Oprah, then it wasn't something small. Oprah wasn't just a famous person to Rihanna. She was someone she admired deeply, someone who had listened to her, helped her feel understood. They didn't talk often, but when they did, the conversations were honest and meaningful. Rihanna remembered that one interview they did years ago. It was supposed to be about music and success, but it turned into something much more personal. She had opened up about her struggles, about things people didn't know. And Oprah didn't judge. She listened. She cared. Since then, Rihanna had always felt a quiet connection with her. So now, when Rihanna felt something heavy in her heart, she didn't want advice from anyone else. She didn't want a therapist, a friend, or a family member. She wanted to hear Oprah's voice. She needed someone who saw beyond the fame, beyond the clothes, beyond the performance. Someone who would speak with honesty and care. As the minutes passed, her assistant returned and whispered, "We're still waiting for a reply. They're trying to reach her." Rihanna nodded and stayed where she was. The clock was moving fast, and so was the pressure. The crew needed to know what to do. But in that moment, all Rihanna could focus on was that one phone call. She wasn't afraid of the stage. She wasn't afraid of the crowd. But something inside her wasn't ready, and until that feeling changed, the show would wait. It wasn't the first time Rihanna had sat down with Oprah, but it was the one that stayed with her the longest. It had been years ago, but the memory felt as fresh as if it had happened yesterday. The interview was supposed to be about music, her rise to stardom, the hits, the tours, the usual stuff. But it turned into something deeper, something more real. They were sitting in the warmth of Rihanna's home in Barbados, surrounded by the calm of the ocean breeze. The setting was peaceful, far from the chaos of the world's spotlight. And in that calm, something changed. Rihanna felt comfortable in a way she had never felt with any other interviewer. Oprah, with her gentle presence and quiet strength, made Rihanna feel seen, really seen. Oprah asked questions, not just about her career, but about her life, her struggles, the challenges that many fans didn't know about, the things that made her human, just like everyone else. Rihanna had never been one to open up about everything. She kept much of her personal life guarded, even from her closest friends. But with Oprah, something was different. It felt safe to share. "How do you deal with the pressure?" Oprah had asked in that interview, her voice calm and understanding. Rihanna paused. She had been asked that question countless times before, but it never felt so real. How do you deal with the pressure? It was a question that dug deep, one she had never fully answered. I don't know, Rihanna had replied softly. Sometimes I just keep going, even when it feels like too much. But I don't always know if I'm doing it the right way. Oprah nodded. You don't have to have all the answers, Rihanna. Sometimes it's okay to not know. What matters is that you're honest with yourself. Those words stayed with Rihanna, even now, years later. In that moment, she realized that she didn't have to be perfect. She didn't have to have it all figured out. It was okay to struggle. It was okay to feel uncertain. And sometimes just admitting that was the first step toward finding peace. During the interview, Oprah also asked her about her childhood, her dreams, and the moments that shaped her. Rihanna spoke about growing up in Barbados, the challenges of being in the public eye from such a young age, and the moments when she wanted to give up. But she didn't. She kept going. And that strength, that resilience, was something Oprah noticed immediately. You're stronger than you think, Oprah had said, her voice full of encouragement. Sometimes it's the quiet moments that show us who we truly are. That conversation with Oprah had been more than an interview. It had been a turning point for Rihanna, a moment when she realized that being vulnerable didn't make her weak, it made her real. And since then, whenever things got tough, she thought back to that conversation. She thought about the lessons Oprah had shared with her. And now, as she sat in her dressing room waiting for that call, those words echoed in her mind. She needed that same support now. More than anything, she needed to hear Oprah's voice once again. And until that happened, she wasn't ready to step onto that stage. The backstage area was becoming more chaotic as time passed. The staff tried to stay calm, but the pressure was building. The crowd outside was growing louder, their excitement growing with each passing minute. Rihanna was still in her dressing room, sitting quietly, her phone in hand. She didn't seem rushed. She didn't show any signs of panic. But everyone else could feel the tension rising. Greg, her manager, paced back and forth just outside the door. He checked his watch every few seconds, then glanced at the crew, who were waiting for instructions. The lights were ready, the band was prepared, and the audience was eager. But no one could move forward until Rihanna gave the word. She was the one who needed to make the final decision. Her assistant approached him. We're still waiting, she said softly, glancing nervously at the door. They're doing everything they can to reach Oprah. Greg nodded, but his mind was racing. It wasn't just about the show anymore. It was about making sure Rihanna was okay. He had seen her go through so much over the years, and this wasn't like her. Usually, she would have been on stage by now, feeding off the energy of the crowd. But tonight was different. As he stood there, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Oprah's team. Greg opened it quickly, hoping for some good news. It was a simple message. Oprah is on the way to a meeting, but she'll call as soon as she can. Please let Rihanna know we're here for her. Greg sighed with relief. It wasn't a call yet, but it was something. He quickly turned to Rihanna's assistant. Tell her we're close. Oprah's team is on it. She'll call soon. Rihanna heard the conversation from where she sat. She didn't react, but the corners of her mouth lifted just a little. She appreciated the effort, even though she knew she couldn't rush this moment. She wasn't just waiting for a phone call. She was waiting for clarity, for peace. The noise outside, the excitement of the crowd, it all seemed so far away right now. All she could think about was the conversation she needed to have. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Everyone had tried to keep the situation under control, but there was a certain weight in the air. Everyone was walking on eggshells. They didn't want to push too hard, but they couldn't ignore the fact that Rihanna was the star of the show. If she didn't go on soon, the whole event would be delayed, and delays were costly. Rihanna's phone buzzed again. She looked down at the screen, and for the first time in what felt like forever, her expression softened. It was a message from Oprah's team. She's calling in 5 minutes. Hang in there. The weight in the room seemed to lift just a little. Greg let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. But still, Rihanna didn't move. She just sat there waiting. Waiting for the right words, waiting for the connection that she needed to feel ready. And then the phone rang. It was the call she had been waiting for. As Rihanna answered, the room went silent. Her team stood in the background, giving her space, understanding that this moment was hers alone. They couldn't hear what was said, but they could see it in her face. Whatever was shared in that call, it was exactly what Rihanna needed to hear. The phone rang and the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Rihanna looked at the screen, then glanced up at her team. They gave her a reassuring nod, silently supporting her in this quiet moment. She took a deep breath and answered the call. As the others waited, they couldn't hear the words being exchanged, but they could see the change in Rihanna's expression. It wasn't a sudden shift. It wasn't a dramatic reaction, but something in her face softened. The tension that had been there for hours seemed to ease away, bit by bit. Rihanna's shoulders relaxed as she spoke, her voice steady and calm, but there was something comforting in her tone. It was as if she had finally found what she had been searching for. Greg, who had been pacing earlier, now stood still. He watched Rihanna, trying to catch any small sign that could tell him what was happening on the other end of the line. He knew the conversation was important, but he had no idea just how much this phone call would change things. Rihanna's assistant quietly stepped forward and whispered to Greg, "We're getting ready just in case. She's going to go out there soon." Greg nodded, but his eyes stayed on Rihanna. He had worked with her for years, seen her through countless challenges, but today felt different. He didn't want to interrupt her, but he could see that whatever was being said, it was giving her the peace she had needed. She wasn't as tense as she had been earlier. Her usual energy was beginning to return, not in the rush to get on stage, but in the quiet way she held herself. She was ready, but in her own way. As the conversation continued, Rihanna's team stayed close, but not too close. They didn't want to intrude. They just waited, knowing that when she was ready, she would signal them. And then the call ended. Rihanna took one last deep breath and set the phone down on the table in front of her. For a moment, she sat still, collecting her thoughts. Greg walked over to her. "How do you feel?" he asked gently, knowing that this wasn't just about the show anymore. It was about something much bigger. Rihanna looked up at him, her eyes calm but with a sense of relief. "I feel better," she said quietly. I needed to hear that. I needed to talk to her. Greg smiled softly, understanding without needing any more explanation. He had seen her go through a lot over the years, but this moment was different. Rihanna wasn't just about to step onto a stage. She was stepping into something much more personal, her own peace of mind. Without saying much more, Rihanna stood up and began to get ready. Her team sprang into action, doing what they did best. The makeup artist touched up her look, the wardrobe team made final adjustments, and the stage crew began making their way to the back. Rihanna looked into the mirror one last time. The reflection staring back at her was the same person, but something had shifted. She wasn't just about to perform for an audience. She was about to perform for herself, stronger and more grounded than before. As she walked towards the stage, the sound of the crowd grew louder, but Rihanna didn't rush. She had taken the time she needed, and now when she walked on that stage, she would do so with everything in balance. The backstage doors opened, and Rihanna stood at the edge of the stage, looking out into the massive crowd. The lights were blinding, and the sounds of cheering fans were almost deafening. The energy was electric, a wave of excitement that surged through the entire arena. But as Rihanna stood there, she wasn't overwhelmed by the noise. Instead, she felt a quiet confidence settle over her. She had taken her time. She had done what she needed to do, and now she was ready to face the crowd. There was no rush, no pressure. The moments leading up to this had been about something more important than just performing. They had been about finding peace, finding the strength to be herself, no matter what. And now she was ready to share that with the audience in front of her. Greg stood behind her, watching. He could see the change in her, the calm in her demeanor. It was a side of Rihanna that he didn't see often, but when he did, he knew she was about to give her best performance. It wasn't about the show. It was about something deeper. Tonight, it was about sharing a piece of her that the world rarely saw. "Ready?" Greg asked, his voice soft but filled with encouragement. Rihanna nodded, her eyes focused. She didn't need words right now. She was grounded, centered in a way that she hadn't felt before. The doubts that had crept in earlier were gone. The conversation with Oprah had given her clarity, and now she felt more like herself than she had in a long time. The music started playing in the background, the sound pulsing through the walls of the arena. The stage crew began their final checks, ensuring everything was set. The crowd's energy grew, their anticipation building. It was almost time. As Rihanna walked onto the stage, the lights hit her. The roar of the crowd was overwhelming, but she stood tall. The familiar feeling of the spotlight embraced her, and for the first time that night, she felt at peace. She didn't have to prove anything. She didn't have to pretend. All she had to do was perform, and in that moment, she realized she had everything she needed to do it. The first few notes of the song filled the air, and Rihanna began to sing. Her voice was strong, clear, and full of emotion. She moved across the stage effortlessly, connecting with the audience in a way that only she could. The fans responded, cheering louder, singing along. But Rihanna wasn't just performing for them. She was performing for herself, too. With every note, with every step, she was letting go of everything that had weighed on her in the past few days. She sang with purpose, with heart, and the crowd could feel it. The energy in the arena shifted, and it became clear. This wasn't just a concert. It was a moment of transformation for both Rihanna and her fans. As the song ended, Rihanna paused, looking out at the sea of faces in front of her. For a brief second, she closed her eyes. In that moment, she knew that the show had truly begun. And it wasn't about the crowd or the lights or the music. It was about her, standing on that stage, fully herself, ready to give everything she had. As Rihanna continued her performance, something magical began to happen. The connection between her and the audience grew stronger with every song. The crowd was completely in tune with her energy, responding to every movement, every note. It was a back-and-forth exchange, the music becoming a bridge between Rihanna and thousands of fans who felt every word, every beat, deep within themselves. Rihanna could feel the power of that connection, but it was more than just the applause or the cheers. It was the way the crowd seemed to understand her, to reflect the same energy she put out. In moments like this, she realized why she did it all: the performances, the tours, the endless rehearsals. It wasn't just about the fame or the music. It was about sharing something real with others, something that transcended the stage. Halfway through the show, Rihanna paused for a moment. She could hear the applause fading slightly as the crowd waited for the next song. Her eyes scanned the sea of faces, their eyes wide with excitement, their arms raised in anticipation. She took a deep breath, feeling a sense of gratitude wash over her. Everything had come together. The time she had spent in her dressing room, the phone call with Oprah, the quiet moments of reflection. It had all led her here, in this moment of connection with the people who had supported her for so long. It was clear now that she didn't need to be perfect. She didn't need to have everything figured out. All she needed to do was be herself. And when she did that, everything else fell into place. "Thank you," Rihanna said into the microphone, her voice soft but filled with sincerity. "Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for being a part of this moment with me. I'm so grateful." The crowd erupted into cheers, but Rihanna didn't rush. She stood still for a moment, allowing the words to settle in. There was something powerful about being in this place with so many people, all sharing a single experience. It wasn't about her alone. It was about the shared energy, the connection that music could create between people from all walks of life. She went on to perform the rest of the set with confidence, her voice ringing out across the stage. Each song felt like a piece of her story, shared with the audience, and the crowd responded, singing along, dancing, clapping. The excitement in the arena was contagious, but even in the midst of all the noise, Rihanna kept her focus. She kept her heart in the performance, remembering everything that had brought her to this point. As the show drew to a close, Rihanna took one last look at the audience. The final song was approaching, and the moment of the last note was near. She felt at peace, knowing that no matter what happened next, she had given everything she could. The crowd's energy was still high, and Rihanna took a deep breath before stepping forward into the spotlight one last time. "Thank you, everyone," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "This has been one of the most special nights of my life." With that, she sang the final note, and the arena erupted into applause. Rihanna smiled, knowing that she had not just performed a show. She had shared a piece of herself, and in return, she had received something even more valuable: a moment of true connection. The crowd's cheers echoed in her ears as she walked off the stage, knowing that tonight had been a victory, not just for her, but for everyone in that arena who had shared this unforgettable experience. As Rihanna continued her performance, something magical began to happen. The connection between her and the audience grew stronger with every song. The crowd was completely in tune with her energy, responding to every movement, every note. It was a back and forth exchange, the music becoming a bridge between Rihanna and thousands of fans who felt every word, every beat, deep within themselves. Rihanna could feel the power of that connection, but it was more than just the applause or the cheers. It was the way the crowd seemed to understand her, to reflect the same energy she put out. In moments like this, she realized why she did it all: the performances, the tours, the endless rehearsals. It wasn't just about the fame or the music. It was about sharing something real with others, something that transcended the stage. Halfway through the show, Rihanna paused for a moment. She could hear the applause fading slightly as the crowd waited for the next song. Her eyes scanned the sea of faces, their eyes wide with excitement, their arms raised in anticipation. She took a deep breath, feeling a sense of gratitude wash over her. Everything had come together. The time she had spent in her dressing room, the phone call with Oprah, the quiet moments of reflection. It had all led her here, in this moment of connection with the people who had supported her for so long. It was clear now that she didn't need to be perfect. She didn't need to have everything figured out. All she needed to do was be herself. And when she did that, everything else fell into place. "Thank you," Rihanna said into the microphone, her voice soft but filled with sincerity. "Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for being a part of this moment with me. I'm so grateful." The crowd erupted into cheers, but Rihanna didn't rush. She stood still for a moment, allowing the words to settle in. There was something powerful about being in this place with so many people, all sharing a single experience. It wasn't about her alone. It was about the shared energy, the connection that music could create between people from all walks of life. She went on to perform the rest of the set with confidence, her voice ringing out across the stage. Each song felt like a piece of her story, shared with the audience, and the crowd responded, singing along, dancing, clapping. The excitement in the arena was contagious, but even in the midst of all the noise, Rihanna kept her focus. She kept her heart in the performance, remembering everything that had brought her to this point. As the show drew to a close, Rihanna took one last look at the audience. The final song was approaching, and the moment of the last note was near. She felt at peace, knowing that no matter what happened next, she had given everything she could. The crowd's energy was still high, and Rihanna took a deep breath before stepping forward into the spotlight one last time. "Thank you, everyone," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "This has been one of the most special nights of my life." With that, she sang the final note, and the arena erupted into applause. Rihanna smiled, knowing that she had not just performed a show. She had shared a piece of herself, and in return, she had received something even more valuable: a moment of true connection. The crowd's cheers echoed in her ears as she walked off the stage, knowing that tonight had been a victory, not just for her, but for everyone in that arena who had shared this unforgettable experience.